Have you ever wondered why some people seem utterly impervious to emotional connection, building walls so high that even those closest to them feel like strangers peering through frosted glass? The journey of how dismissive avoidants were broken begins long before anyone realizes something has gone terribly wrong. These individuals didn't choose their emotional fortress. It was constructed brick by brick during their most vulnerable years, when tiny hands reached out for comfort and found only empty air. Understanding this particular attachment style reveals a profound truth about human nature. We all adapt to survive, even when those adaptations ultimately harm us. Dismissive avoidants learned early that emotional needs were inconvenient, burdensome, or simply irrelevant to the adults who should have provided safety. Like skilled architects of their own isolation, they built elaborate defense systems that would serve them well in childhood but become their prison in adulthood. What makes their story particularly compelling is how their survival strategy appears so successful from the outside. These individuals often excel in careers, maintain impressive facades, and seem remarkably self-sufficient. Yet beneath this polished exterior lies a different reality, one where genuine intimacy feels foreign and emotional vulnerability triggers an almost physiological need to retreat. Their childhood taught them that depending on others leads to disappointment, so they learned to depend only on themselves. But here's what most people miss about dismissive avoidance. Their detachment isn't callousness. It's a sophisticated coping mechanism that once saved them from repeated emotional injury. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Picture a 7-year-old child coming home from school, bursting with excitement about a drawing that earned praise from the teacher. This child races through the front door, artwork clutched in small hands, ready to share this moment of triumph. But instead of finding a parent eager to celebrate, there's only distracted acknowledgement or perhaps criticism about the mess of art supplies left behind. This scene repeats countless times with different variations. Scraped knees met with impatience rather than comfort. Bedtime fears dismissed as silly, achievements minimized or ignored entirely. Now imagine this same scenario, but the child is Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl. Even someone as seemingly confident as Blair, with all her designer armor and sharp wit, would begin to internalize these messages. The child learns that emotional expression creates more problems than solutions, that needs are better kept hidden, and that the safest relationship is the one you have with yourself. Years pass, and this child develops an almost supernatural ability to self-soothe, to handle problems independently, and to appear completely unaffected by situations that would devastate others. Friends marvel at their composure during crises, their ability to make rational decisions without emotional interference. But what looks like strength from the outside feels like numbness from within. The breaking point often comes during a relationship that demands more emotional availability than they can provide. Perhaps they find themselves drawn to someone like Joe Goldberg from the Netflix series You, someone whose intense need for connection directly conflicts with their need for emotional distance. The push and pull becomes unbearable, not because they don't care, but because caring feels dangerous in ways they can't fully articulate. But understanding the origin of this pattern reveals something crucial. It can be changed, though the process requires patience and tremendous courage. The first step toward healing dismissive avoidant attachment involves recognizing that emotional numbness isn't a superpower. It's a survival strategy that has outlived its usefulness. This recognition often feels like waking up from a long dream. The confirmation bias has been working overtime, filtering experiences to confirm that emotional distance equals safety while ignoring evidence that genuine connection might be possible. Start by noticing when the automatic retreat happens. Pay attention to those moments when someone expresses a need for emotional support or deeper intimacy, and observe the immediate internal response. There's usually a physical sensation, perhaps tightness in the chest, a sudden urge to check the phone, or mental busy work that creates distance. These aren't character flaws. They're alarm bells from a nervous system that learned long ago that emotional engagement meant potential pain. The next crucial step involves challenging the belief that depending on others inevitably leads to disappointment. This belief system operates like a self-fulfilling prophecy, creating distance that ensures relationships remain superficial and ultimately unsatisfying. Begin with small experiments in vulnerability, sharing a minor concern with a trusted friend, asking for help with something manageable, or expressing appreciation for someone's presence in life. Practice emotional labeling, even when feelings seem absent or confusing. Dismissive avoidants often experience emotions as physical sensations rather than recognizable feelings. That knot in the stomach might be anxiety, the sudden fatigue could be sadness, and the urge to stay busy might be avoiding loneliness. Learning to translate physical experiences into emotional vocabulary takes time, but it's essential for developing emotional intelligence. Create intentional space for processing relationships rather than defaulting to avoidance. When conflict arises, resist the impulse to shut down or walk away. Instead, communicate the need for time to process, then actually use that time to examine what happened rather than simply hoping the issue disappears. This might sound like saying, "This conversation is important to me, but need some time to think about what you've shared. Can we continue this tomorrow?" Work on distinguishing between healthy independence and defensive isolation. Independence involves choosing when to rely on others and when to handle things alone. Defensive isolation involves automatically rejecting support even when it would be beneficial. Someone like Emily Cooper from Emily in Paris might struggle with this balance, needing to learn that accepting help doesn't diminish her capability. Address the underlying fear that emotional needs will overwhelm or burden others. This fear often stems from childhood experiences where emotional expression was met with irritation or rejection. Testing this assumption in small, safe ways helps build evidence that healthy relationships can accommodate emotional needs without collapsing under their weight. Most importantly, understand that developing secure attachment as an adult requires grieving the childhood that should have been. This grief process isn't about blame or dwelling in victimhood. It's about acknowledging that important emotional needs weren't met and that this absence shaped fundamental beliefs about relationships and self-worth. The path from dismissive avoidance to secure attachment isn't about becoming emotionally dependent or losing the valuable self-reliance that was developed over years. Instead, it's about expanding the emotional repertoire to include healthy interdependence, where relationships enhance rather than threaten personal autonomy. Recovery from dismissive avoidant attachment represents one of the most profound transformations possible in human relationships. Those who undertake this journey don't just heal themselves, they break generational patterns that might otherwise pass to future relationships and potentially their own children. The process requires immense courage because it means dismantling defense systems that have provided protection for years, often decades. But on the other side of this transformation lies something that childhood couldn't provide: the ability to experience genuine intimacy without losing personal identity, to offer and receive support without feeling diminished, and to navigate the full spectrum of human emotion without needing to retreat into isolation. Remember that healing dismissive, avoidant attachment isn't about becoming someone completely different. It's about becoming more completely yourself, including the parts that learned to hide away long ago. The strength and independence that developed through necessity don't disappear. They become choices rather than compulsions, tools for navigating life rather than walls that keep life at bay. Start today by simply noticing one moment when the impulse to distance arises, and instead of judging it, approach it with curiosity. What is this feeling trying to protect? What would happen if, just this once, the response was connection rather than retreat? These small moments of choice accumulate over time, creating new neural pathways and eventually new ways of being in relationship with others and with yourself.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.